how to make a puppet that can grip something. I started off with just a block, drawing the bits onto the block, and then I'll show you hopefully how we can make the hands, or at least we'll do one of them. I've already done one here, so we've got one to work from. So it's fairly simple. Now I've done the shape like that, so it's already started to got a sort of curl in the fingers. You could have your hand starting from the straight position if you want, but this is going to be for a weightlifter puppet, so he's going to have sort of quite chunky, gnarled hands, and he's got a sort of ready to grip shape there. So that's where the hand starts, and then it will be able to grip to that position. Now it's stopped by the thumb, and I've done that deliberately because I want to limit the movement there. I don't want any stress put on the joint, because it's going to have to lift a barbell up, and I don't want, when this is flexed, I don't want any stress put on this rotation point, because there's really not much wood there. Now you could reinforce that with a little bit of metal in there if you wanted to, but hopefully we won't need to, because I've got this thumb stopping point here. Now if you want to make your hands grip further, you've obviously got to carve it so that your thumb is out of position. So I've got it here so that as it comes in, it hits the thumb like so. But if you want to do a proper gripping hand, you'd carve your thumb more up, like so. So when you grip, they'll come underneath the thumb, and then you can go for a full grip round. But that won't do me any good, because he's actually going to hold a bar in here, which is going to be about this diameter. So it wouldn't do me any favours to have a full grip round like that anyway. If you wanted to make a puppet that could perhaps make a fist and punch someone, then you'd want to do that. You want to do that, sort of get it fully round like so. But as I'm going to grip something that's going to be about that diameter, there's no benefit for me to do that. So it's better for me to make this and have this stopping point here, which, as I say, takes the pressure away from the joint as well. So it's a double reason for that. It's a fairly simple joint, obviously. Now you could do this a different way. You could use perhaps some leather in here, and you could just cut straight down where you want the rotation point to be, or the flex point to be, and perhaps insert a small piece of material, leather or something like that, into each piece that will allow for that. But I've gone with an actual sort of mechanical rotating joint here, so it's very simply just a pin through a hole. So we've got our hands into two pieces. This one's got an extension which sits into the cutout on the hand like so. Now I'm going to cut this. I'm going to start shaping the hand, then I'm going to cut this out and continue shaping. If you haven't got a scroll saw or a very, very fine fret handsaw, then you probably want to actually make your hand in two pieces, because it will be easier to cut for you and to get the joint to fit properly, because you won't be able to cut this out unless you've got a very, very fine saw to do that. So if you haven't got that ability, then I would say start your carving with two pieces and make them fit together, rather than having it as one solid piece like so. So this is the piece we're going to be working from, and we're going to hopefully end up with the left-hand version of this one. So we'll see how we get on. Now this is quite small. Again, this is probably as small as I'd go for this type of gripping puppet. You could go smaller, I guess, but you need to be very, very picky about the sort of wood that you use, the graining on the wood, so you can get the detail and the strength there. But this is about as small as I would like to go, really. So that's that, and we'll see if we can get stuck in to our hand. Right, so we've started with our block here, and I've tried to just do some basic cuts. So I haven't cut out the shape entirely So hopefully if you haven't got access to a sort of bandsaw, then you'll be able to follow along a bit easier. But I've done just a few basic cuts in here, which is the reference for my fingers and thumb. So this is the angle of the fingers, this bit here. This is the reference point for the top of the thumb. This, obviously, all this timber here has got to come away down to there, as has that, because that's the angle cut back from the thumb here. So this is coming away, and obviously all this is coming out too. But I haven't cut all that away for you. But you could, obviously, with a fret saw, hand fret saw, you can do these cuts in to help you get to start. Now, first thing we've got to make sure I do is do the hand correctly, because I've already done the puppet's right hand here, so I need to make sure it's the opposite, so it's the left hand. So I need to make sure the thumb's in the right position. I don't want to end up carving two right hands. So I've drawn on here what we're looking for in terms of how the hand is going to work. This is roughly where the fingers are, so we can start removing some timber. Now I can obviously get rid of this bit first of all, because this is obviously excess here. We can just literally cut into there, get rid of that bit, and we can get rid of this bit here. Let me just pull that bit off. Now I need to redraw in just a little bit of the shape of the hand. Now we've got rid of that bit. So this is coming back here like so, round to our hand, to the base of the hand. So we're looking at shaping that around there and removing this amount of timber here. And we can also start to move round by some of the fingers. So I'll just get rid of some of this first. Obviously you can use some gouges if you want to do this. If you've got a bigger hand and you want to do it quicker. This is obviously quite a small hand. You might want to be carving something a bigger hand for your puppet, but that's up to you. It's probably easier to get the detail in when it's bigger. The smaller things go, the more difficult it is to get the detail. But anyway, right, so we've got rough shape out for that. Now I've got this finger here is like so, but I don't want to cut it past there, so I want to leave a little bit extra for the thumb. So we just need to come in for that bit and remove a little bit of timber along the top there for the finger. I'm just using a big knife here at the moment, but we'll get to use some more detailed tools in a minute. I'm just using this for shaping. So now with our thumb here, we've got this coming round like so, and that's going to loop around up to this point here. So all of this material here has got to come away. Now you could drill that out, you could get a drill and come through there if you wanted to, or we can hopefully just use some tools to remove that. Let's find a gouge. Right, so I've got not a too large a gouge here. So we've not only got to remove this material here, but where the thumb is, we've also got to remove a good chunk of this part here. So we're looking at this area here a lot of this timber's got to come away as well. So I'll remove this first and it'll allow me to get into here a bit more. So we'll take some good chunks out of here. Let's come back in. Being careful not to remove where the thumb is though. So I'm just leaving some spare around there at the moment. So with that, we can now come here, move some of this away, start to get our definition line around here. I'm just paring away here because I've already got this cut in here, so I can't go past there. Like I say, a quick way to do that would be to drill down through that hole, but let's see if we can do it without. There we go, so you can see we're starting to get the shape. And we can get in there a bit more with this tool, just remove hopefully across there. Okay, so we started to get our basic hand shape. Now we can look at putting a little bit more detail before we cut out for the joint. We've got rid of this excess material here. We'll just do a little bit of removal onto the length of the fingers here whilst this is still attached, because it would just be a bit easier for me to manoeuvre. So we will get, so I've just drawn on there the lengths of the different fingers there, so I'm just going to not going to get the final finish, but I'm going to just start to get them roughly to where they want to be. So I'll just mark these around so I can see. So we'll mark where the end of the finger is. Same with the little finger. Same with this one here. Right, so just set the length of those fingers, and we will draw down the lines for the fingers there. Now this is where I'm going to probably do the cut now. So it's on this line here. So we can see, I can zoom in here. I'm going to cut here, then to the middle finger down and across. So before I cut that, I'm just going to tidy up a little bit more and give myself a mark line to work to. So I'm going to do that with the knife. Right, so I'm going to cut that shape out. So if we look at the other hand here, the one I've already done, you can see what I'm attempting to do. And as I said before, I'm going to cut this with a scroll saw, but if you haven't got access to that, or a very fine fret handsaw, then I'd advise you to make these in two pieces to start with, rather than trying to do it this way and make it as one and then cut it out. So bear that in mind, but I'm going to do that. I'm just going to double check that we're right. So yes, that's what I'm going to cut away. Okay, so over at the scroll saw, I've got my piece here, and we're going to see if we can cut it without breaking the blade. Now you can see we've got our hand in two parts, and so this is the knuckle where it's going to bend. So here is the knuckle where it's going to bend. So now we can do a bit more shaping. Obviously we'll keep it in two parts to start with, then we'll put the put the joint in and then do the final finish. So we can now, we've got this, we can define the lines of the fingers. So you can use a V tool here if you want, just to start to define the fingers. And again, you can put as much or as little detail into these as you want to. Right, so you can define the lines of your fingers there. You can then follow those lines down into the palm, and we're going to mark palm there. So that's the line here where the palm and the fingers start there, and so going to put in a little bit more detail there. If you just want to do a basic hand, then you can sort of skip ahead to where we do the joint, but because it really depends on how much detail you want to put into your hand. With a little bit more tidying up, I mean, that could be your basic hand shape once you tidied up the thumb around there a bit. So So we're going to cut back at a slight angle for the thumb here, so it's tapering back towards the fingers slightly, and then we're going to bring this down here so it's just slightly tapering back towards the index finger. And we're going to create just a little bit of shape under here, under the thumb. And then back in here a second, so we're looking at just a little bit of shape here, and then a second where the joint of the thumb is, a second definition line there. Just create a little bit more interest and detail to it, so it's not quite just a sort of a lump sticking out, just to make it a little bit more, I hate to say realistic because that's not really what we're going for, but just a little bit more detail, something a little bit more interest to the design. And you want to round over the top as well, so we want to create a little bit of a round over, because obviously your fingers and your thumb aren't flat, so create a little bit of contouring over there. Round over the inside. It is sort of easy when you're doing, sometimes when you're doing bigger puppets, to get this sort of the extra details in, but it is just about doable on these. So there we can see the thumb starting to take shape. I have to a little bit more there. And then we'll look at top just a little bit. Just take a fraction off there. And then take the edge off there as well. Right, so you can now see the hand is starting to take shape. I can start doing a little bit more detail on the fingers, and we'll work on both sides of the fingers as we need to taper them down a little bit. We're going to extend these lines backwards here. Now we've got this one here and this one here, and then this one here, like so. It's going to be over just a fraction more there. You can see on this we've just got a little bit of definition where the bones of the hand are. Again, this is not a detail you have to put in particularly. I'm just going to define those first of all with my V tool. I'm not using that for the finish, I'm just doing the start here with the V tool just to give myself a line to work to. And then we're going to create a little round over. Now remember, this is supposedly our knuckle point here, so we can do a little bit of extra shaping around there, create almost like a knuckle. And then taper those in for there. And then finally this last one in here. And then we can trim back a little bit more here. Create a slight curve over for the hand so it's not completely flat. I might have to put those details back in a little bit again in a minute. Take a fraction off the top of here. A little bit of extra material here. Right. So now I can start putting those lines back in. Let's do a little bit more off the top here. This would be easier if you're doing your hands flat to start and then grip. This is obviously going to be a lot easier. It's because I've got a sort of preset curve in here, which is making it a little bit more tricky. If this was just a flat plane across here with my fingers, we'd probably be done by now, but so we've got this curve to deal with as well. Bend in the fingers, it's adding a little bit more complication to it. But we're nearly there. Yeah, so it's not too bad. So just work a little bit more on the inside, and then we'll do the joint. So we want to define this finger line in here. A little bit more off the top here. Right, so I've done more detail on my hand, just finished off the detail in there on the fingers. So we'll look at the creating the joint. Now it's fairly simple, as we can see. We've just got a rotation point around this piece here. Now you might want to drill the hole before carving if you're a bit unsure, but I think it's, if you're careful, it's probably easier to do it afterwards, because otherwise you've got to make sure you've got to carve exactly in the right place to get the hole in the right place and all that sort of thing. So I think first time you're probably better off waiting till you get to this point. You've got it nicely assembled. You've got a nice fit on the two pieces. You've got enough extension there for the rotation point, and then we can just pop the hole through. Now you're going to need a very small drill bit, and if you haven't got an electric drill, if you're using hand drill, then you're going to need some way of holding this piece as well. But luckily I've got a little battery drill here, and I've got a 1mm drill bit in there. So we're just going to mark up where we want the hole. Now you might find it's best to get a pointer or a pin or a end of a nail or something like that, so you can mark the centre of the hole before you go straight in with the drill bit. So let's grab a nail here. So I've got my nail, and I'm gonna mark where I want the drill bit to go, and then when you actually get the drill bit on there, hopefully it should go in the right place and won't slip around. Because if you've got a curved surface here and you're going to try and drill straight into that, your bit can slip around, not get exactly in the right place. So you want to work out where you need it to be. Now we want it to be roughly, obviously, in the centre of this piece here. So you're going to have to sort of do that by eye, I think, first of all. So we're going to find where we want our centre point on there, and then we're going to just push our nail in to create a point for our drill bit to go into, and then hopefully when I drill on there it won't slide and be in the wrong place. So I'll just take that out for the moment and just make sure that's nicely there. Now what I'm going to do actually is drill this bit first without the other piece in, because I want to make sure that I get straight across here. So I want to be straight across that line. So, and I also want to make sure that I'm not deviating either way. So I want to make sure I get it nice and perpendicular through, straight that way and that way. So on both planes, get it nice and straight through. So I've gone through, fully through there and halfway through here. I haven't come out the other side. It doesn't matter if you do. You can fill the hole if you want to give it a bit more room, but I've not gone in there, so I'll hopefully only have to fill this one hole at the top. Now I can pop this piece in, line it up where I want it to be, and then I can re-drill the hole through. You have to make sure it's exactly where you want it to be. You can come through again. And that's then our hole through there. Now I'm going to use some thin wire here. You could use a nail again or something like that, but I'm just using this thin wire. So I've got it, the drill bit is thick enough for it to go through, and hopefully also for it to rotate on. I don't want it, usually I'd have it sort of tight in the hole here in this part to get a nice fixing, but because I don't want to have to force this through, I'm going to have it loose, and as long as we fill the top to stop the pin working its way out, then it's not going to matter that it's actually loose in both parts. But when I say loose, it just means it's free enough to allow for the movement of the hand, like so. So that's pretty much it. You might need to adjust here, your cutaways here, so we need some cutaway on the inside to allow this to move in. If you leave them flat, you'll notice it won't move, so we need to be able to remove a little bit of timber in like a V shape there, just so it gives room for these fingers to close, like so. So that's our gripping hand. And I'm not going to do this now, but simply to finish off, what I would do is measure mark the wire to length, and then cut it so it's just going to sit below the surface, and then I would just fill that with a little bit of wood filler on the top there, or just a tiny blob of glue if you want. If you haven't got any wood filler, you can just mix up a bit of glue and maybe a bit of sawdust and pop in the top there. If you can't do that at all, then you can, once you've got the wire in, you could just bend it over and snip it off. But like I say, you don't want it to work its way out, so it's probably best if you actually glue that wire in if you can't keep it under the surface. So that's our gripping hand. I'm just going to free it up a little bit more because I want it to be a little bit more free flowing. It's just slightly tight. If I look at this other one that I made first, we should have a little bit freer movement on this one. So I'll show you this one. Get it lined up. So we can see how this one closes nicely. It's got a bit more freer movement, which is what we want. So we don't want it to be too stiff. And that's our gripping hand. Now we'll get to the stringing up part later, but in terms of stringing for gripping, obviously you want to string for your hand to control the hand, so you could put a string somewhere there, or maybe on the back of the hand, depends on how you need to control it. But for your gripping string, you want to come through the middle there. It doesn't want to be a tight hole for the string, but we want to come through there so it's got movement, it's got allow the string to be able to go through, then come through fully through the hand to here, through the fingers, or preferably the joint in between the fingers if you can, a little bit neater, and all the way through and tie it off, or halfway through and peg it and glue it in place. If you want a really neat finish, then don't go all the way through to the other side, and that will then allow for when that string is pulled, it will pull up from the inside to close. But we'll show that when we get to the stringing part of this particular puppet. So there we have it, a gripping hand for holding on to things or letting go.